Hey y'all, look who I got with me today. The mister. It is hot as crap out here. I thought I'd get him out the house today. Ride around a little bit. We're going for dinner. We got a couple places we got invites.
Why do you want to kill me? I need help. Those desperate words, caught on a chilling 911 call, were the last anyone ever heard from Teresa Adams-Pugh. Just hours later, both she and her husband of over 20 years were dead in their Garner, North Carolina home. It happened on March 23, 2025. When 911 operators tried calling back the disconnected line, Chris Pugh picked up. He denied calling, but they could still hear Teresa in the background, pleading for her life. By 11 p.m. that night, after a tense standoff with police, both were found with fatal gunshot wounds. This wasn't supposed to happen to Chris and Teresa, not them. For 2 decades, they were the picture of family success. 4 children, 14 grandchildren. A beautiful home on Cheney Drive, where holidays came alive with Teresa's famous decorating. She was the devoted church secretary known for her warmth and creativity. Chris was the calm, supportive husband who seemed to put family above everything. Their neighbors saw nothing but love. Their community respected them. Their social media showed nothing but smiling faces and perfect family gatherings. What turns a loving husband of 20 years into a killer? Have you ever looked at a couple and thought, they've got it all figured out, only to discover later that things weren't what they seemed? How well do we really know the people closest to us, or even those we see every day? Behind closed doors, this perfect marriage was hiding something dark. A 911 call that ended with gunshots. Police surrounding a house that once hosted joyful Thanksgiving dinners. A community left shocked and confused. What warning signs did everyone miss? What pushed Chris to this breaking point? And could anyone have stopped it? Today we're digging deep into what happened that tragic night. We'll uncover the shocking details investigators found and try to understand how this model couple met such a violent end. If you believe exploring these truths is important, and you don't want to miss our future investigations, take a second now to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. You're joining a community seeking understanding beyond the headlines. So, who were Chris and Teresa Pugh to the outside world? If you asked anyone in Garner before March 2025, you'd hear a story of stability, family values, and community dedication. Teresa Renee Adams was born on June 29, 1970 in Moore County, North Carolina. By 54, she'd built a life centered around faith and family. As secretary at St. Anna Free Will Baptist Church, she didn't just manage paperwork. She became the heartbeat of church activities. Ask anyone there, and they'd tell you Teresa kept everything running smoothly with a smile. She had a flair for making a house a home. Friends talk about how she'd transform their place for the holidays, especially Thanksgiving, which became legendary among family and friends. She didn't just decorate, she created experiences that brought people together. And Chris? He was seen as the calm anchor. Neighbors called him supportive, dependable, the quiet guy making sure everything ran smoothly while Teresa shone. At 53, he'd cultivated an image of the steady family man, the kind who'd drop everything to help a neighbor or show up early to set up church events. This image makes what happened later almost impossible to comprehend, and it hid pieces of his past few knew about, including a felony conviction he kept buried from most of his social circle. Their marriage spanned more than 2 decades, building a family that expanded to include not just their 4 children, but 14 grandchildren. Their home became the central hub where relatives gathered for advice, celebration, and support. During holidays, you could count on the Pugh house being full of laughter, food, and multiple generations connecting. In Garner, a community where people know their neighbors, the Pughs weren't just residents, they were institutions. They showed up for local events, maintained friendships, and built connections through church and community activities. People respected them not just for who they were, but for the family they had built together. Their social media painted the same picture. Smiling family groups, anniversary celebrations with captions about blessed marriages, proud grandparent moments. Comments from friends reinforced it all. Couple goals, and family is everything to these two. During holidays, their home buzzed with activity and celebration. Teresa coordinated elaborate meals while Chris worked behind the scenes, making sure everything from parking to seating arrangements went perfectly. Their children brought spouses and grandchildren, filling rooms with conversation and creating memories. To everyone watching from the outside, Chris and Teresa had it all: lasting love, healthy children, beautiful grandchildren, community respect, and a comfortable home. No one could have guessed what was building beneath the surface. March 23, 2025. It started like any other Sunday in Garner. Nothing suggested that by day's end, the quiet neighborhood on Cheney Drive would become the center of a tragic investigation. That evening, a 911 call came from the Pugh house. Then, the line went dead. Dispatchers tried calling back immediately. Chris answered, his voice calm as he denied making any emergency call. But in the background, they could hear Teresa's voice pleading, "Why do you want to kill me? I need help." Those words set everything in motion. Law enforcement from Johnston County rushed to the scene. As officers approached the house, they heard disturbed voices, then the sound of gunfire. The situation had already turned dangerous. Hours ticked by. A tense standoff unfolded. Police surrounded the house while negotiators attempted to establish meaningful communication with Chris Pugh. At one point, there seemed to be progress. Negotiators believed Chris might be willing to come outside, offering a glimmer of hope, but communication broke down. He remained inside while police considered their options, trying to determine if Teresa needed urgent help. With each passing hour, the situation grew more complex. Neighbors watched from a safe distance as more police arrived. Specialized units and an armored vehicle were brought in. Tactical teams prepared for possible entry. Attempts to reconnect with Chris went unanswered. The home that had hosted countless family gatherings now sat silent and surrounded. The standoff lasted for hours. Police established a perimeter and eventually obtained a search warrant, concerned about the welfare of those inside. At approximately 11 p.m., with no other options remaining, officers entered the residence. Moving through the house, they made a tragic discovery. Both Chris and Teresa had suffered fatal gunshot wounds. Evidence at the scene indicated that Chris had shot Teresa before taking his own life. The house that once displayed family photos and holiday decorations became a crime scene. The gun found was one Chris shouldn't have legally owned due to his prior felony conviction. Another troubling piece of this tragic puzzle. That stark contrast between the loving family man everyone thought they knew and what happened that night. Makes you think, doesn't it? How well do we truly know the people in our lives? Let us know in the comments if you've ever realized someone wasn't who they appeared to be. Sharing these experiences might help others recognize warning signs. When the Johnston County Sheriff's Office began their investigation into what happened at the Pugh residence, they faced both a straightforward case and a profound mystery. The evidence painted a clear picture of a murder-suicide, but understanding how a seemingly stable 20-year marriage ended in violence proved more challenging. The investigation started with the 911 recording, the call that captured Teresa's desperate plea. "Why do you want to kill me? I need help." This recording, along with the dispatcher's callback when Chris calmly denied any emergency, while Teresa could still be heard in the background, provided crucial documentation of the situation's escalation. Forensic evidence collected from the scene confirmed what the 911 call had suggested. Chris had shot Teresa before taking his own life. The weapon recovered during the investigation raised additional questions, as investigators discovered that Chris, as a convicted felon, was legally prohibited from possessing firearms. This felony conviction came as a surprise to many in the couple's social circle. The revelation highlighted Chris's ability to compartmentalize different aspects of his life, maintaining a public image that didn't reflect his complete history. For a man known in the community as a calm, supportive husband, this hidden past added a layer of complexity to understanding his final actions. Through interviews with family members, investigators learned that Teresa had reached out to her sister in the days before her death. During these conversations, she had expressed feeling trapped in her relationship and voiced concerns about Chris's reaction if she attempted to leave. While these comments hadn't specifically predicted violence, they now stood as indicators of growing tension in the marriage. The investigation also revealed subtle but significant changes in the couple's behavior. Teresa, who had been actively involved in church activities for years, had recently begun missing commitments that had previously been priorities. This withdrawal from activities once central to her identity represented a change that, in hindsight, suggested growing problems at home. Family members described a shift in Teresa's attitude toward her marriage. She had reportedly grown dissatisfied with aspects of their relationship, though she hadn't specified exactly what troubled her. This change in perspective about a marriage that had appeared stable for decades provided investigators with context for understanding the growing tension. After analyzing the evidence and conducting interviews with those closest to the couple, investigators concluded that the breaking point likely came when Teresa discovered something about Chris, perhaps related to finances or some other hidden aspect of his life, that led to a confrontation. Rather than facing this confrontation, Chris responded with violence. The case was officially classified as a murder-suicide, providing a legal framework for what occurred, but leaving many questions unanswered about the psychological journey that transformed their relationship. For those who knew the couple, the investigation's findings were difficult to reconcile with their understanding of Chris and Teresa. This disconnect between public perception and private reality, how a family known for their holiday gatherings and church involvement could end in such tragedy, remains perhaps the most troubling aspect of the case. The investigation revealed how completely someone can separate their public persona from their private struggles, making it challenging for even those close to them to recognize danger before it escalates to violence. Looking back at the Pugh case, certain patterns emerge that experts recognize as warning signs of potential domestic violence. These indicators weren't obvious alarm bells. They were subtle shifts that, viewed with hindsight, might have offered opportunities for intervention. Teresa had begun expressing concerns to close family members about her relationship. Not dramatic declarations of fear, but quiet indications that aspects of her marriage were troubling her. She had reportedly voiced dissatisfaction with elements of Christopher's behavior, a significant change from her previous descriptions of marital happiness. When someone who has consistently painted a positive picture of their relationship begins expressing doubts or concerns, it often signals deeper troubles. In the days leading up to the tragedy, Teresa reached out to her sister multiple times, a frequency that differed from their usual communication pattern. Family members later revealed that during these conversations, Teresa mentioned feeling trapped and worried about how Chris might react if she chose to leave. These expressions of concern, while not explicitly predicting violence, suggested growing tension and fear within the relationship. The most telling behavioral change involved Teresa's participation in church activities. For years, her role as church secretary had been central to her identity. When she began missing meetings and pulling back from responsibilities, people noticed the change but didn't connect it to potential problems at home. This withdrawal from activities once central to her life represented a significant red flag. Isolation often precedes escalation in controlling relationships. Chris's hidden past, particularly his felony conviction that remained unknown to many in their social circle, demonstrated his capacity for compartmentalization. This ability to maintain separate realities likely enabled him to present one face to the community while concealing significant personal issues. People who can successfully hide important aspects of their lives often become skilled at managing perceptions and controlling narratives. The couple's changing social patterns offered another indicator. They had begun withdrawing from certain community activities and gatherings, a shift that friends and associates noted but didn't interpret as concerning. This gradual isolation limited opportunities for others to observe their dynamics or offer support. Exactly what controlling partners often want. Financial pressures, while invisible to their social circle, created additional strain. The investigation revealed evidence of economic difficulties that contradicted the couple's outward appearance of stability. Financial stress frequently underlies domestic tensions, particularly when one partner begins hiding money issues from the other. The presence of a firearm in their home, despite Chris's legal prohibition from owning guns, represented another serious risk factor. Access to weapons significantly increases danger in volatile domestic situations, a fact that became tragically relevant in the Pugh's case. The most significant warning sign came in Teresa's final moments, her desperate plea for help, captured on the 911 call. This direct statement of fear represented an escalation from the subtle indicators that had preceded it, tragically coming too late for effective intervention. What makes these warning signs particularly challenging is their subtlety when viewed individually. Teresa didn't appear with bruises or file police reports. Chris maintained his reputation as a calm, supportive family man. The danger built gradually, with each small change easily attributed to normal life stressors rather than recognized as part of a dangerous pattern. These quiet shifts, someone pulling back from activities they once loved, expressing vague relationship dissatisfaction, reaching out to family more frequently, often signal deeper problems. Recognizing these patterns isn't easy, especially when someone has built a strong public image of stability and happiness. By sharing these potential warning signs, we hope to help others recognize similar patterns before they escalate to violence. Have you noticed subtle changes in someone that concerned you? Your observations shared in the comments might help others identify warning signs in their own relationships or those of loved ones. The news of the murder-suicide sent shockwaves through Garner. In a community where people know their neighbors and value their connections, the tragedy felt deeply personal, even to those who knew the Pughs only in passing. The dissonance between the couple's public image and their violent end challenged fundamental assumptions about recognizing danger and supporting community members in crisis. Neighbors struggled to process what had happened. The family, known for their holiday decorations, church involvement, and large family gatherings, was now at the center of a tragedy that defied explanation. People gathered near the scene, sharing memories of interactions with Teresa and Chris, trying to make sense of an event that seemed impossible just days earlier. Vigils were held to honor Teresa's memory. Her church community at St. Anna Free Will Baptist gathered, focusing on her contributions and the warmth she had brought to their congregation rather than the circumstances of her death. These gatherings provided a space for collective grief, while also highlighting the impact one person can have on a community. Local media covered the story extensively, moving beyond the immediate facts to explore the human dimension. Reports examining how violence can exist behind seemingly perfect facades prompted discussions about domestic violence awareness. These conversations acknowledged that relationship danger doesn't always present in expected ways, and can exist even in long-term marriages without previous known incidents. The tragedy prompted public discussions about issues many in the community had previously considered distant from their daily lives: domestic violence, mental health, the importance of reaching out to others. Suddenly, these topics felt intensely personal and relevant to life in Garner. Community leaders spoke about the need for greater awareness and better support systems for families under stress. For the Pugh children, the impact was immeasurable. They faced not only the loss of both parents, but also the impossible task of reconciling their father's final actions with the man they had known their entire lives. The 14 grandchildren now faced growing up without their grandparents. Family, friends, and church members rallied around them, offering support while navigating their own complex feelings about the situation. Support organizations throughout Johnston County reported increased interest in their services following the tragedy. The case prompted many to reconsider their assumptions about what domestic violence looks like. Many realized it isn't always obvious and can exist in relationships that appear loving and stable from the outside. The church where Teresa had been such an active member sought ways to honor her memory through awareness efforts. Conversations began about how to better support families under stress and how to recognize when someone might need help, but isn't directly asking for it. These discussions represented the community's attempt to find meaning and prevent similar tragedies in the future. Perhaps the most significant community impact has been a greater recognition that even the most seemingly perfect families may be struggling privately. The case challenged people to look beyond social media presentations and public appearances to check on those close to them. It prompted reflection on how communities can foster environments where people feel safe seeking help before problems escalate. The Pugh tragedy has become, as one community member put it, a reminder that we never fully know what others are going through. This recognition that appearances can mask suffering and that intervention before crisis may prevent tragedy remains the lasting legacy of this case in Garner. So, what do we take away from this incredibly sad story? Here at True Crimes Recast, we look for the lessons even in the darkest cases. And the Pugh tragedy is a stark reminder of how appearances can hide painful realities. It forces us to ask uncomfortable questions about the gap between public image and private truth. Their story shows how a couple known for community involvement and family dedication could experience a breakdown that no one anticipated. Chris and Teresa's case demonstrates how violence can emerge without the warning signs we expect. While friends and neighbors saw a stable, loving couple, small shifts in behavior went unnoticed or misunderstood. Teresa's decreasing church involvement, her feeling trapped, and Chris's growing control were subtle changes that hinted at deeper problems. The case has prompted important conversations in Garner about mental health support. It highlights that even people who seem to have it all together might be struggling with significant private challenges. The pressure to maintain a perfect image can prevent people from seeking help when they need it most. The revelation about Chris's illegal gun ownership despite his felony conviction has raised questions about how prohibited individuals obtain firearms and how such laws are enforced. Perhaps the most powerful impact has been on how the community thinks about relationships. The Pugh's tragedy reminds us that controlling behavior often escalates gradually. What begins as small changes in communication can develop into dangerous situations if left unchecked. For the 4 children and 14 grandchildren left behind, this tragedy created a particularly complex grief. They faced the dual trauma of losing both parents while reconciling their father's final actions with the man they had known their entire lives. The case challenges us to check on those close to us, especially when we notice changes in behavior. It reminds us that expressing concern isn't interfering, it's caring. And it shows us that creating safe spaces for honest conversations about relationship struggles might prevent similar tragedies. Ultimately, the Pugh story leaves us with uncomfortable questions about the faces people show the world and the battles fought in silence. There are no easy answers, only a tragic reminder to look closer, listen harder, and extend compassion, even when everything looks perfect on the surface. Exploring these complex stories helps us understand human nature and, hopefully, recognize warning signs. If you found value in this analysis and want to continue exploring true crime cases that make us think, please subscribe and join our community. What's the biggest lesson you take away from Chris and Teresa's story? Let us know in the comments below. Thank you for watching.